So let's get started. Good afternoon. Let me greet you all in the audience, and let me also greet our online audience. My name is Tinatin Ahlediani. I am Research Fellow at the Center for European Policy Studies, CEPS, and I'll be moderating this session on Ukraine's gradual integration into the European Union and its single market. It's a very important issue, so we convened here this high-level panel, and we're very pleased to have with us Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine for European and Euro-Atlantic integration, Ms. Olga Stefanishina. Welcome. We have with us Minister of Labor and Economy of Austria, Mr. Martin Kocher. Welcome. Deputy Governor of the National Bank of Ukraine, Mr. Yuri Haletay. Welcome. President of German National Metrology Institute, Ms. Cornelia Denz. Warm welcome. And Research Director of the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting based in Kiev, Ms. Veronika Movchan. Welcome. Now, we're going to engage with the panelists for the next hour, but I will make sure to reserve the time to engage with you, the audience, so stay with us till the end. Now, we are talking about Ukraine's gradual integration, which is actually already happening, right? We saw for Ukraine already in place autonomous trade measures that allowed Ukraine's full access to the EU single market, with some exceptions, but still. We saw solidarity lanes. We saw Ukrainian refugees, millions of them in the European Union, who now have access to the labor market. So gradual integration is already happening. So let me turn to Deputy Prime Minister to check with her what are the lessons learned so far and what are the next steps that Ukraine can deepen its gradual integration with an EU single market.
Thank you so much. Indeed, I think it's a very important angle that we are putting into the discussion over this Berlin conference on recovery of Ukraine. As you've heard yesterday from my president and from Chancellor Scholz, EU accession has been one of the key pillars of today's discussion, and Germany has taken the lead behind integration of Ukraine into internal market and has identified as its strategy the economic integration of Ukraine throughout the war, and acting as if Ukraine first and foremost becomes a member of European Union, and then the victory comes somewhere on the way here. And that's really really important, because indeed Ukraine is not a newcomer on the European market. Ukraine is not a newcomer in terms of reforms related to integration, to alignment with the EU rules. Ukraine enjoys the customs liberalization. We have the transport liberalization, we have a trade liberalization, which has been significantly scaled up with the beginning of a war and necessity to release the good. But also we have enormous experience of actual impact of European integration to the survival of our country. Because if we would not implement our obligations under the association agreement on maritime transport and the internal waterways, we would not be able to explore the Danube River to the extent we could. As let's remember, in the beginning of war, this was the only route for exportations. While there no trade liberalization were in place, the priority was to release people through the borders, and the Black Sea and the Azov Sea have been blocked, and we have only the Danube Channel. And if we would not have a proper legal framework and standards, we would simply be disabled from any exports at all. So this is the actual impact. This is the actual impulse where we could have taken the decision on granting the temporary protection statutes to our people, because we had the visa liberalization. We have put on the necessary migration, border control framework and necessary communication in that regard. The same about customs liberalization, and the most important about integration of energy and electricity market. I just want to bring to our memory that from the night on 23rd to 24th of February, it was not only the full-scale aggression started, it was also the night when Ukraine has cut itself off from Russian and Belarus electricity grids. And we started the testing mode for our integration with the EU electricity market. And now we are here and we export electricity to European Union, but also we're capable to sustain our energy system in that regard. I mean, so we're not newcomers. And the largest lesson we learned as a country for ourselves, first, is that these investments are really vital for our survival. I mean, investments in reform and transformation. But I think the whole Europe has learned that most of the, let's say, instruments of the Russian propaganda trying to, let's say, antagonize or threaten the European market by Ukrainian agriculture, Ukrainian people or whatever, are nothing but the illusion. So we have been a civilized, trustworthy, reliable partner for all of the 10 years with the association agreement in force, and we have remained this partner since the war has started. So I think from this perspective, the accession is mostly the process and emotional choice of nearly every Ukrainian in this country. And but I would be happy, of course, to hear all the participants and on our side and some estimates. But this is basically the agenda Ukraine invests in the accession process, and Ukraine's delegation will be leading at the accession.
Thank you so much. I think this sets great groundwork for the for continuation of the debate. And let me actually turn to Ms. Movchan, because the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned association agreements. Ukraine is not a newcomer to the EU market. Can you tell us a little bit more to what is the level of the implementation of the association agreements and the deep and comprehensive free trade areas? And are they still the powerful tools for Ukraine's integration into the EU single market?
Thank you for this great question, and I fully agree with Ms. Stefanishina that association agreement and the CFTA are still very relevant. Basically, if we look at the legal implementation, it's quite high. It's about 80% according to the governmental estimates. But if we look at the implementation and actual steps achieved, we see that far more can be done to implement association agreement, especially in sectoral integration. What has been achieved by now? We have one product with recognition equivalence for agriculture and food. It's for seeds. We have quite progressed customs with common transit union, common transit system, and we have energy with joining electricity grids, as was mentioned. But still a lot has to come. For example, and we will definitely talk about that probably more, but I already want to bring it, it's ACA, agreement on, it seems I got nervous. Agreement on conformity assessment and acceptance of industrial products, which has been talking for a while. Actually, first ideas to have that was about 20 years ago with Kuchma time. Starting 2014, I hear from the government that Ukraine has achieved legal approximation. We are in 2024. We have progressed much. There was expert missions completed. There are recommendations on table. I really expect that Ukraine will be able to step forward and get these agreement signed, at least for first several areas, hopefully even this year. But I have to highlight that this is only the beginning, and we have much more there, areas to sign, to have it meaningful, because so far it will be more symbolic. And one more important thing about ACA is that it's much more important for European producers selling to Ukraine than for Ukrainian producers selling to EU, especially after the beginning of the war and destruction of many production sites, relocations, and all the hardship of Ukrainian economy. Ukraine will use it for sure, but for bringing goods to Ukraine, it's much more important, European goods. But it's not only ACA. We have the same type of agreement for food safety. We have this recognition of equivalence. We have things to do still in customs, for example, mutual recognition of authorized economic operators. We do have internal market treatment 4 areas not yet realized. We have public procurement, we have recognition of recognition of qualifications, and also mutual agreement. We also have things outside association agreement. For example, a digital union. The roaming has been promised for already some time, not yet realized. And there are more things to come. Basically, the association agreement set the goal of economic integration. And this is great because it can help Ukraine, while going on the path of accession, still get some fruits on the route, and not both Ukrainian and European societies being disillusioned with accession, as it happened in some other candidate countries. And as Ukraine has been working on things, on reforms for already 10 years, we are now standing at the edge. Then we still have things to do, but we can start getting fruits out of that.
This is a great summary. So just mentioning ACA, digital, going outside of the European Association Agreement and inside of it, more than a decade of reforms. And this brings me to another question to Ms. Dentz, because beyond agreement, and I think Veronica mentioned 20 years working on ACAs, can you get us on speed? What is the role of quality infrastructure that can play to help Ukraine improve its access to the youth market?
Yeah, maybe let me first of all start with that Ukraine has always been a very strong economy, and economy with a wealth of natural resources, but also a wealth of technical advancement. And so the war has not only hit people, but also hit trade. And I think now we are here to try to push trade to the state that was before. There was a lot of enthusiasm when in 2016 Ukraine started the association process with the EU, and I think now it's time to continue it in that way. And quality infrastructure is a way to do so. And maybe if you don't know what that is, quality infrastructure is a joint forces of what we stand for, metrology, so precision measurement, but also having other bodies connected. It's standards body, accreditation body, conformity assessment to products that are in the European Union, and also market surveillance. And these joint forces are rather important because they build an anchor of trust for customers, but also for enterprises to have trade together. And this anchor of trust then boosts the economy, and it's very important for each economy in Europe. And that's what is already very well developed in Ukraine. We have 4 metrology institutes, and Germany was always in favor of a prosperous economy and a prosperous quality infrastructure in the Ukraine. So first of all, you have to support the metrology, find new instruments that have been destroyed, get electricity generators, but also because quality infrastructure is international, to allow Ukraine, also Ukraine metrology, to enter into the international community of metrologists in Europe, to connect to the so-called Euromed community, that is the European Metrology Association. Also come to associations of different accreditation bodies that are international together. And that's what we are doing now. And I think in terms of organizations, all parts of the quality infrastructure are yet established. Maybe it's a little bit harmonization that is still needed, and the processes needs to be adapted, but it's on a very good way. And I think what we do now is consulting and supporting the quality infrastructure in the Ukraine to get more adapted to the European processes. And for that, ACAAs, or the let's say the accreditation of calibration certificates, is important, because these calibration certificates will really create a single market. So on the one hand, export from the Ukraine will be easier, but import to the Ukraine will also be easier. So the trade will then flourish much more. And that's why it is important. And just yesterday, our 2 governments have signed an international partnership where all these people and different institutions of quality infrastructure on the Ukrainian side and on the German side will join forces, and in a bilateral way will have negotiations to come to these agreements and fill them with life. And when I think of the different fields where this ACAA, the conformity agreement, can flourish, there's all the natural resources, but also the new sustainable development goals, looking at hydrogen, green hydrogen, looking at sustainable energy, solar power, but on the other hand, on the IT development, which will be rather important for digitalization and artificial intelligence. I think when this agreement is there will be so much export and import that this really will boost the Ukrainian economy, and that will be complementary and really helpful for Europe. So we are looking forward to that.
And Ms. Dant, what is your expectations? Like, when should we reach this agreement in place? Because we just signed it, right? Conference saw it yesterday.
That's right. So the agreement is generally needs to be in different sectors, and certain sectors need to push a little bit more than others. But I think in sectors that are already important, like sectors that are connected to sustainability, I think we will be very soon on the way, because we have 4 powerful metrology institutions in Ukraine. Maybe they need to be harmonized and find their role, but everything else is in place. So I would estimate with a little bit effort, we could be very soon there.
And which will be the challenging sectors to come into conformity?
I think challenging is at the moment that especially for companies in the Ukraine, if they want to enter now the European market, but also other markets, they have to have created a couple of conformity assessments. They have to have accesses to the market. That means duplicating calibrations, duplicating measurements, duplicating the access to market. And I think that is something that needs to be resolved very quickly, because it's a bureaucratic burden, and with this ACAE, the burden will be lowered. And then, of course, you have more time in order to really make export and import.
Thank you very much. And this brings me to the EU member states. So we heard here a lot the needs for Ukraine's, deepening Ukraine's gradual integration in the digital transport, implementation of the association agreement, apparently the conformity assessment. So how would all this, when implemented, and maybe further steps, how would this work for the EU member states and for the, EU single market? What Ukraine can bring to the EU single market?
Thanks a lot for having me. First of all, I think from the perspective of the European Union, of course, the extension of the European Union towards the east and towards the southeast is an important future growth motor that the European single market really needs at some stage. So there is a very good case, also an economic case, for enlargement towards the east, especially, of course, with larger countries like Ukraine. I think that's important to mention, because we always discuss the accession from the perspective of the access candidates, but we have, of course, very good arguments for the existing EU members to move the accession processes forward. It will be, of course, a task that will not be easy. I remember, and I think it's a nice coincidence, Austria joined the EU 30 years ago, and exactly 30 years ago today, we had the referendum on EU accession. And it was a referendum that brought a two-thirds majority for accession. But I remember that, of course, there were discussions going on within Austria in terms of whether the industry will be competitive enough to actually survive EU accession. We had discussions in agriculture. So I think the gradual integration approach that we're having has to go beyond trade. It has to go into those areas where vulnerabilities are particularly strong, and that's the areas I just mentioned: agriculture, the industry in certain sectors, not the entire industry. On the other hand, given the very strong integration that we already have, many Austrian European companies being active in Ukraine, there is a lot of exchange that we can build on. And also, I think that's something that I think the federal president mentioned yesterday in the reception. The Ukrainians in Europe, I think it's about in the European Union to be precise, the 4 million Ukrainian refugees, they are bridge builders. They know both sides and can help in this gradual integration process. Of course, and that's something I think has to be mentioned, there is certain homeworks that also the European Union has to do. I think that's very important to keep in mind. Institutional reforms and the capacities for this accession, the change in some of the policies, I think we'll have a lot to do, and we should not wait it out. We should start soon so that the perspective of accession is a realistic one, also in a realistic time frame.
Could you elaborate a little bit? What do you mean by all the reforms? Basically, EU's homework. What is it? The homework for the Ukraine to be ready for the Ukraine succession?
So it's pretty clear that the institutions that we have in the European Union, they are designed actually for a European unification for about 15 countries. Now we are 27, and I'm always speaking about enlargements towards the east and towards the southeast, because there is candidates in the Western Balkans that have very good chances, I think, to join also in a time frame that is not too far in the future. So we need to make sure that the decision-making processes are easier, and we need to make sure that the policies, the cohesion policies and the agricultural policies that we have, are adapted to the accession of especially a large country like Ukraine.
Sure, and one more question to you. How the gradual integration of Ukraine sets the precedent for the other candidate countries and sets the precedent for the EU's enlargement policy in general. The gradual integration, deepening their access to the single market, that's the way the enlargement should go ahead?
Absolutely. I think it's never a 0-1 aspect, being a full member or being not a member. We have different models and formats, and Austria has proposed, in particular for the Western Balkan countries that are candidates, to have a similar procedure, a similar process in place with gradual integration that makes it easier to make the step for full integration with full membership. And I think it's important to mention it's not something that should actually postpone full membership. It's something that should make full membership easier and provide benefits early on for both sides, thus actually enhancing popular support for membership on both sides, actually, because that's something we have to keep in mind. We need popular support in the countries that are candidates, and I know in Ukraine the popular support is high, but we also need the popular support within the European Union to make sure that this is going to happen in a realistic time frame and not too far in the future.
Thank you so much. That's very insightful. And we are speaking about the country during the wartime, right? So let me elaborate with Deputy Governor. How is the country doing in terms of macro-financial situation? Because before we speak about economy and the trade and investment, the country has to remain economically functional. And if you can tell us what policies the country has implemented to support businesses to remain functional and deliver.
Thank you. It was a huge challenge for us to ensure macro-financial stability since war outbreak. But what is important to emphasize, the economic recovery in last year was stronger than expected, with resilient growth in first quarter of this year. Economic activity last year was robust, with growth of 5.3 percentage points. It was a good result in wartime. Crucial contributor for effective functioning of the economy was energy sector. Unfortunately, aggressor started in March renewed attacks on energy, and it will have negative influence on the growth this year. Our estimate is that growth will be around 3 percentage points this year. We achieved good result in terms of monetary policy. Inflation is 3.3 percentage points. We introduced in 2022 tight monetary stance. We increased key policy rate. In April of this year, we decreased, and now key policy rate is 13.5 percentage points. Our projection for inflation this year is 8.2. We have to take into account pressure from labor costs, further recovery in consumer demand, and as well pass-through from currency depreciation. We are monitoring the situation, and we are ready to, in case of the need, to adjust our monetary stance. What is important to mention regarding financial system? Banks are liquid. We do not have runs from depositors. Financial stability was ensured. Profitability is satisfactory. That's why in this area we are feeling very comfortable. Regarding what is important to mention in terms of gradual transition to single market, we have to impose FX restrictions. Strict FX restrictions and
on what?
FX to transfer currency abroad. Before the war, it was our priority, and we made considerable progress in free movement of capital. Unfortunately, it was only one way how to protect international reserves. It was to impose restrictions, but we are gradually removing these restrictions. We are trying to find difficult trade-off between protecting reserves, between allowing business to pay abroad, and we, in the beginning of last months, proceeded with largest package of easing reform, liberalization reform in the area of FX. We allowed business to pay for services, for import of services. We allowed to pay for interest for old loans. We as well adjusted our criteria for new loans. For example, nowadays, if business wants to receive loans abroad, 1 year they will have opportunity to pay interest. After 1 year, they can pay principal as well. Hopefully, it will boost business activity. We allow to pay for leasing and rent. It was huge package. Budget, our estimation for this reform is $5.4 billion US. We'll continue to monitor situation, and our priority is to increase these liberalization steps, hopefully this year. But unfortunately, we cannot remove all restrictions at one time. It will have negative impact on our net international reserves, and we have to protect financial stability and to navigate in this.
How can the EU help? How can Brussels
EU
help?
is helping with European facility. EU facility is a huge contributor to our reserves. What can be done additionally? Our task is to change our regulations, to amend financial regulations in order to be in line with EU. What can be done by European Business Authority? It's important for us to raise additional resources from our debt market, internal debt market. Unfortunately, European banks have some limits. Taking into account EU regulations, maybe it's a good idea to consider waivers for risk weighting of Ukraine. It will stimulate to raise new funds in domestic market and will help to finance budget deficit for our Ministry of Finance, and we are ready to help from our side as well in terms of regulations, etc.
And the budgetary deficit for this year, is it promising? Is the country managing?
You know, when we speak about budget deficit, in 2022 it was 26.4. Last year it was 25.3 as far as I remember. Unfortunately, this year again is high deficit. It's above 20 percentage points. But in case we will receive, and I believe we will receive, we have financial insurances. Financial aid, first of all, on a regular basis, we will cover this deficit. Our internal debt market has good capacity, banks have good liquidity. That's why I believe we will proceed successfully. It's important for us to be prepared for the next years even, because frankly, I believe in terms of risk management, we have to focus on long-lasting war. That's why we have to prepare our public finances, banking system, and we will do this.
Thank you so much. And this is a good point to actually look in the audience, especially business representatives, and to hear from you. Maybe the banking sector. Please raise your hands, introduce yourselves, and inquire with the panelists. I see the question here in the first row. Can we have the microphones here?
Thank you very much. Borislav Ivanov from Deutsche Bank. I'm regionally responsible as well for Ukraine, and actually have been for several years as well CEO of our subsidiary in Ukraine. So well acquainted with the banking system. And I have indeed to say that National Bank is doing really a great job in these difficult times to keep the currency stable. And we appreciate a lot as well that all these reforms are now in place to liberalize as well the market. As well, great to see how Ukraine is developing in terms of EU accession, especially in this difficult currently for the country situation. And as energy was the main topic, I think where most of the efforts indeed from the international business community have to be in the next years is really in the energy sector, because obviously a lot has been destroyed now, but I think we shouldn't look back, we should look forward. And in this situation, the right thing to do is to create a new energy system and to use the new technologies that are available. And actually that's what we are doing as well. And we yesterday signed a MOU with Ukernafta in order to explore the possibilities for several now planned gas power plants with the newest technology. And I think this is the key, because for the European Union, sustainability, ESG, is the key topic currently. And Ukraine has great plans, as we know as well, in terms of wind power generation, in terms of solar power generation. And I think we can create in Ukraine an example how actually for whole Europe these topics can be targeted.
And what should we expect? Sorry to come to you to the question, but what should we expect as the first, fruits of this agreement?
Well, obviously, many German companies are currently working together in order, first of all, to mobilize as well private investments, and second, to pave the way, as I said, for new investments in the energy sector in order to create this new type of power plants, which provide the most modern technology, and obviously to fill the gap which is currently existing in the energy sector. Of course, support as well from the Ukrainian side is expected, especially in terms of further moving all the necessary reforms in the country and keeping the financial sector stable. This is key in order for all these projects in future to happen.
Thank you. Other questions in the room? There was the questions lady to the second row.
Thank you for giving the floor. I'm Anna Isichko, I'm not business. I wish that civil society, and I believe that civil society one day will be treated by banking system at all levels, at national and international level like business. I'm representing Center for CEDEM. It is CEDEM, Center for the Democracy and Rule of Law. And I'm here, first of all, to give the huge acknowledgements to the National Bank of Ukraine, who really did an enormous job to keep our banking system safe and sound absolutely soon after the invasion of Ukraine. And I wanted just to recall a couple of words of Her Excellency Katerina Maternova. Just a couple of weeks ago, during one of the receptions in Kiev, she marked that there are several, up to 3 miracles for her in Ukraine, and one of them was preserving banking system in Ukraine. And that is a great signal from our European partners that they properly see what's been done at our national level for us to be absolutely fully able to enter single market, which means apparently the smooth entrance at the area of banking services. That is the first thing. And another thing is that civil society in Ukraine currently is being treated as highly risky. It is due to the fact that our legislation in the area of anti-money laundering and combating financing terrorism is pretty strict. It's one of the strictest at the level of European Union, I must say. That was made for reasons. That was made for us to be able to fight the corruption. And I'm again, another time I want to reiterate that we are doing this deliberately and on purpose, because we want to to be trustworthy. We want to show our full integrity and transparency. But that brings us to unintended consequences for civil society organizations. That means that in the time of war, our bank accounts have been blocked, and that's not only a national tire problem, it is a problem at European level as well. That's why the previous year the European Banking Authority issued its regulation calling and urging the bank system of the national jurisdictions of members to have a look at ensuring the access to banking services for non-profit organizations, because there is definite problem with banking de-risking. That's why we were ensuring the dialogue with the National Bank of Ukraine, and we've done a huge, well, not huge, but a good roundtable which launched the discussion between banking sector and non-profit sector on how these problems could be tackled in order to keep that integrity and us being fully operational. So here is the thing that we truly believe that the and another thing, these days international partners.
Because I need to give.
I wanted just to say that national banks should showcase more about public and private partnership, because what they've done, it's another case, and sometimes we just forget to tell more about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah.
Thanks a lot. And the gentleman in the second row, the same row.
Hi, thank you so much to the panel. It's super fascinating. My name's Luke Cooper. I work at the London School of Economics, and within that context we've been doing some work with Ukrainian partners on trade and industrial policy. So my question was to Veronika Movchan, but any of the panel could answer it, of course, perhaps. I was interested in what you were saying about the ACAA. And last year, when I visited some industrial sites and producers in Kiev Oblast region, lots of them would say to me that they encounter soft regulatory barriers when it comes to exporting to the European single market. And some of them even laughed at me, to be frank, when I asked them if they were exporting to the European single market. So in this context, this could be a really important development for the Ukrainian industrial sector, and it's hugely needed. I was just concerned with your expectation that it could asymmetrically, in the short term, favour European exporters. And is that to do with the profile of the specific goods that would be assigned to the ACAA initially? And do we not need to look at that and think about where Ukraine could benefit most in the short term while the war is ongoing, and adjust that accordingly? Because that, after all, would not cost the European Union anything. It's just it could just be a sensible adjustment to trade policy to maximize the benefits for Ukraine.
Thank you. Any other questions in the audience before we move on responding to your comments and questions? All right, then let me come back to the panel. Shall we start with Ms. Movchan?
Thank you, and thank you very much for the question. Indeed, my assessment is based on the trade profile. Actually, I did this assessment before the full-scale aggression, before 2022, and currently the trade profile changed even more, justifying this argument. Unfortunately, it's not easy for EU now change the plans for ACAA and conclude it on other products. It has been tremendous efforts just to bring these three. It's not actually products categories or sectors, because we are talking about, very specifically, we are talking about machinery, about low voltage equipment, and electromagnetic compatibility. And even these three sectors, it's very rare products for which only these three directives, or any one of them, or any two of them, are required. Most likely there will be other directives covering the same product. So still, even with this first round of ACAA, we will not be able, Ukraine will not be able to just go to the EU market without third-party assessment of the EU if it's required. However, it is just a first step. next will definitely follow much quicker than this one, because it is first the framework agreement. But I don't think that, I'm sure that it's extremely important for all Ukrainian exporters that are now facing barriers of these duplicate conformity assessment. And I hope that including the exporters whom you met, will benefit. Unfortunately, it's not the largest part of the Ukrainian export profile as of now. But imports, and you know that perfectly well, is actually crucial for Ukraine. Ukraine is not importing consumer products. Ukraine importing either intermediate goods or investment products, and basically investment capital products are those that are hugely important for ACA. And it means that Ukraine can not only benefit EU trade balance, it can build upon European technologies to develop its own production or to build into the value chains. Therefore, I would not ask for reprofiling now. I would ask for speeding up what we have been already prepared and making as clear as possible next steps. So what other sectors will come, when they will come, because business needs actually some planning, and then they can definitely benefit from the agreement.
Ms. Dance, would you like to add?
I just want to thank you for your comments, either for the help of ACAA for the trade, ease of trade, getting rid of some of the bureaucratic burdens, but also you of the idea of having a new energy system. And among these first ACAA categories are also electric systems that belong, for example, to the capital good of wind engines. So you can already start to build this new energy market, but also on harvesting machines. So this is also included, and this might be another way of export. So in a way, it starts off softly with some examples of these three areas, but it shows already that it's a bilateral way. And I think maybe in former times this was more oriented into the import, but now I think this is already creating value chains for an export to come, especially for the new energy systems, because these are the capital goods that are connected to these areas.
Sure. Before we come to the questions, I would like to bring in Deputy Prime Minister to address the comments from the civil society, and then also Deputy Governor.
Thank you so much. I will bring us back to the reality, as our panel is about the internal market, and for Ukraine, it's far beyond industrial products. Right, most of the trade liberalization covers non-industrial products, and it's the food products and agricultural production and different types of, let's say, raw materials. So this is a huge share of the market we are already into, and bringing back the energy here. Although, I mean, I want to be really give some word of gratitude to this panel, because ACA was a dead idea in my head, as not a priority for this year. But at this point, we're about to start the bilateral meetings under every chapter of the agreement, and according to the Commission's proposal, at this stage, we should particularly request an accelerated integration, and additionally to the trade liberalization what we have right now, we will be requesting this decision to be taken as well, and it perfectly fits to the agenda of this year, and I think it would really be another instrument of helping Ukraine to change a bit of mindset in terms in favor of more processed products, and working on processing these products based on the European regulation and standards in Ukraine to gain more credit, let's say, on the European internal market. And I think, my total thinking is from the different perspective, because whatever we've been doing to European integration, to reform our country, has been helping us to survive. And I see it from the perspective that it would be a good transformative instrument for Ukrainian economy to restructure and transform. But let's just understand that Ukrainian potential is far beyond industrial products, and this is basically one of the instruments which is remaining there, although it's only the financial market where national bank is really start digging, and we have not been really swimming into the sea, and the governor has put in it as the high priority. So in many areas we just start and we will be scaling up.
Thank you. Deputy Governor, you would like to pick up the comments?
National bank activities, we will continue to do our best and safeguard macroeconomic and financial stability. Regarding your question on civil society, first of all, we understand the importance of civil society, effective contributor to integrity and transparency of Ukrainian society. In terms of financial monitoring, our priority is that our Ukrainian banks implement risk-based approach. That's why I believe it's enough space for effective cooperation with you. We are ready to discuss this issue separately with banks, and in case we will find bottlenecks, we will try to sort them out. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw a couple of more questions in the room. Microphone here.
Thank you. Hello?
We hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. My name is Vitaly Butenko. I represent energy company of Ukraine. It's a state-owned energy trading company. Great panel discussion, single market. Was a very good example, but Olga, with regards to the I would say a paradigm shift of disconnecting from the legacy grid and reconnecting to the European grid. And someone who's in the energy sector for quite a long time, there was a lot of discussions prior to that and how technically it's difficult and challenging it is. And yet, when the push comes to shove, we have a case in point when that is possible. And the further integration from the energy point of view, obviously, is something that's probably going to be spearheading general integration. If in 2022, despite the fact there was a war, Ukraine was net export of energy and helping Europe with those huge prices, and we were exporting due to the destruction of the energy system by Russian aggression. So now we are net importer because we're short. But my point, and that also the question. So fundamentally, what we are seeing is that there is a huge propensity and interest on both sides for further market integration. We ultimately are facing difficulties due to the institutional resistance, which we see on the European side because of the typical rules by which the integration and more cooperation are taking place. They are currently probably not always applicable because the game has changed, and that would require, in my view, also in order to manage the risks, that requires stepping out of the comfort zone that typically we see when it has a time, because Ukraine has lost its comfort zone in February 22. So and for us it's more existential, both in economic and political and social. So the question I would like to hear the reflection of our colleagues from the European Union. What is the propensity to step out of the comfort zone and look into not on the boilerplate solutions, but on the new solutions for managing the risks that are currently pertinent for the Ukrainian situation. This is, and it was mentioned by someone particularly acutely, has been underlined when we're discussing the huge renewables potential in Ukraine and the problem with the corporate PPA and in order to structure those kind of transactions. So the money is ready to come in, the risks currently cannot be addressed. So without the institutional and change of paradigm from the European Union, that probably will be just the talk. So I would like to hear the panelists sort of kind of reflecting on that going forward, because the game has changed. So we have to look for new approaches.
Thank you. Final call for the questions from the audience. Okay, if there are no more questions, let me then turn to the EU member states, because this question was addressed to hear the opinions from the EU member states. So, floor is yours.
Thanks. I cannot speak for all EU member states, but let me just dwell a bit on that aspect. I think it's really important, and I think we have to distinguish between two tasks that we are facing. On the one hand, and I completely agree with your appeal for coming out of the comfort zone, it's measures that take place now to support Ukraine. And of course, in the long run, perhaps also support Ukraine in full EU membership. But this does not have to be necessarily the same when we come to specific measures, when it comes to energy markets, when it comes to specific measures, also even in trade. Some of the things are necessary given the situation that we are facing, and they are not according to the standard procedures of candidate states accessing the European Union. On the other hand, and I think that's important, this distinction, any kind of candidate will actually exceed the European Union at some stage and will stay there forever. There is no procedure of quitting. I mean, we know there is a recent example that was not very successful in my view. Anyway, of course, there has to be some typical procedures, because there is more than a handful of candidates now that actually want to be treated in a similar way when it comes to implementing the URC and all the procedures that are necessary. And I think that I fully understand that this is sometimes difficult, because we have to be realistic and there has to be compromises on the normal procedures. On the other hand, I think it's important also in the interest of the other candidate countries, and of course in the interest of the European Union, to make sure that we distinguish between what is needed for Ukraine now and what helps perhaps later for EU accession. But there is a standard procedure for the full integration, for full membership actually, and that not necessarily contradicts each other. But I agree with you. Stepping out of the comfort zone was important. I think the EU did in some areas. I remember the discussion about trade liberalization. Of course, there were concerns in the countries, because Ukraine is a large country with a large exports, especially in food. The Deputy Prime Minister mentioned that, and that is of course a concern for farmers in the European Union. The EU did it. It was a bold move very quickly, and I think it was the right move actually.
Any final comments from the other panelists on the questions? Then I think with this, we should stick to the time, for which I'm very happy. Let me thank to our panelists for their time, for their great insights. Let me thank you all for your great engagement. I wish you a good continuation of the conference. Let me just note that the next session in this room will be hosted on the topic of green transition as a business case. So stay on board. If you are joining us online, stay tuned. And I thank you.